Hi, this is Walter McKenzie, and thank you for being in the moment. This month, we're addressing our 10th principle of educator agency and efficacy on innovation. If the old adage is true that there's really nothing new under the sun, that doesn't have to discourage us from thinking about new solutions to age-old problems. And maybe there's some comfort in that because so many of the things that plague humanity are things that have been around since the beginning of our recorded time anyway. And so let's not think of innovation as a way of breaking the mold and reinventing the wheel and pulling something out of thin air that no one has thought of before. Clearly, if technology has proven anything over the last 25 years, it's that we're very good at flooding the cybersphere with all kinds of ideas and all kinds of duplication of ideas, but there certainly isn't a lot of new going on. And so let's embrace that. Let's say, okay, when it comes to innovation, we're not talking about creating something out of whole cloth that's never existed before. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe so much of what we do when we think about innovating starts with where we're stuck, where we're trying to think outside the box. And the reality is any worthwhile innovation, any truly ideal solution to a problem has to be based in where we're stuck. It's what we know, it's what we've lived. We are the experts on where we're stuck and probably why. And so you need to start there. And when you start there, you feel so bogged down. You just feel so overwhelmed with, oh, I've been here before and I've beaten this to death and I still don't have any answers. And it keeps us back. It makes us feel like we can't be inspired and we can't innovate. But the truth is, you need to start there. You just don't need to be bogged down by it. Acknowledge the fact that there are institutional factors in public education that we have been unable to move the needle on because they are so entrenched in the profession and in government and in our communities. Indeed, when we talk to stakeholders about schools, they talk about when they were in the classroom as students 10, 20, 30 years ago. That's their frame of reference. And so we need to start there. There's no sense creating some perfect world where education is a utopia if we can't actually replicate it in the real world and address real world problems. So then if we're going to do that, if we're going to innovate, but we're going to do it in ways that actually address the needs of public education. The good news is there's never been a better time because there's so much disruption going on. Things are getting blown up left and right, and we're going to have to rethink things anyway. So unlike the pandemic, where we said we had done all kinds of wonderfully innovative things, let's keep it going. We've been backsliding. That's not this. There's not going to be an opportunity for backsliding with the huge changes that are being made at different levels of government um, and across different states when it comes to funding and regulation and support for public education. So, where do you start? Well, number one, you have to feed your curiosity. If your voice inside you is saying, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way it's always been, and you're just stuck with what you know, then you're not feeding your curiosity. You're talking to the very pragmatic, practical adult who's just sitting there trying to figure out how to not bang his head against the wall again and say, why does it still hurt? Feeding that curiosity is the place to start. Second, don't deny those emotions, feed them. The anger, the frustration, the sense of hopelessness. These are things that can energize that curiosity and push you to want to find out more. Third, solitude. Today there's just so much noise and static and distraction that if you don't find time for quiet, to quiet your mind, to allow yourself to stop being constantly jacked up by everything happening around you, um, you're never going to unleash that curiosity and that power to innovate. Connection. We're not going to do this alone. We're all on this together. Um, any other platitudes that you'd like to throw in that reinforce the sentiment? Find other people who are collaborators, who are innovators, who don't have a problem thinking outside the box. Even if it doesn't take you to an obvious practical solution, it'll push your thinking into the what ifs and how comes and why nots. And then having the courage to take risks, to fail and learn from that failure. And what I've learned a lot in working with people in the corporate side of the world when I was working for a nonprofit is, their motto was fail fast. Because the faster you fail, the faster you learn, well, that didn't work, and you get back up there and you get back in there and you try something else. So hold on to that. That could be a helpful way of looking at this when you're innovating. Fail fast. Stop worrying about being right, being perfect, or only having good ideas. Fail fast. That's okay. That helps you rule out what's not going to work. We've got to embrace the disruption. What's happening, we wouldn't have signed up for, wasn't our idea. There are many moments in our days as educators where we wish we could roll back the clock and not have to face what we're facing. But here we are. So embrace it. Understand it's not going away. Dive into it. Face it head on. Now's the opportunity to get rid of some of these old ways that have been so institutionally entrenched that we have not been able to innovate education in ways that's best for kids or best for the profession. Be playful. Times are so serious and stressful. You need to make time to have fun because it's in those moments when you're being more childlike that you let the adults sit down and take a break and you see glimpses of ways to think of things differently and look at the world differently. And therein lies the beginning of the path to new solutions to old problems. Immerse yourself in being mindful. This goes beyond just finding solitude. This is being reflective and intentional and moving forward in ways that are deliberate in innovating and transforming education. Listen to the stories others have to tell. Yes, for a lot of us, the stories are very similar, and that's affirming. But there are people out there that have very different stories, and they're powerful, and they open our eyes and our minds to things that when we resign ourselves to the way things are, we're not there. So find those people and listen. And then finally, probably most importantly, reflect on where you are and how you got here. So that as you begin to move forward and think about innovating, you're able to have a frame of reference and a starting point that says, okay, this is why I'm here. This is who I am. And this is where I want to go from here. In all these things, innovation is not some novelty party trick that you pull off for the wow or for the novelty. It's really taking all that experience you have, all that knowledge, all that desire and passion, and saying, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to find a way to do better, and I'm going to contribute to the greater good. And honestly, if all of us in education were in that same mindset and doing that same work, there's no way we won't move the ball forward and transform education and inform that discussion so that the decision makers who hold the purse strings and run for the elections and try to drive the public narrative have a better narrative to use about what the vision is in a democratic society for a free public education for every single child. So innovation is the focus. Please enjoy the blog post. And I hope this reflection nicely augments what's in the blog post. We're glad to continue this conversation with you in the Worthy Educator. Just reach out and let us know. But for now, thank you for being in the moment.